Greetings, this is Father Michael with our word of the week. This week's word is companions. This month we've been celebrating the feast of our Holy Father Dominic, and this week to reflect on the companionship he shared with another great saint, the patron of our city, Saint Francis. Now, throughout the years, the connection between Dominicans and Franciscans has been sort of like siblings. There's been times of support, times of rivalry, but always a sense of complementarity and companionship in our respective charisms. And this goes all the way back to our founders, Saint Dominic and Saint Francis. Legendarily, there is a story that it was at the same time, around 1215, that both Saint Francis and Saint Dominic were eager to have the church give official approbation to their orders. And the church, even though in need of renewal and transformation in its day, was a little hesitant to give its stamp of approval. After all, there had never been religious life acting in the world and preaching while at the same time maintaining a contemplative prayer life. You were either a monk or you were a diocesan priest or other sort of active ministry, but there'd never been a blended life in which the friars would preach and take alms and be mendicants. And so both St. Francis and St. Dominic were eager to have their orders indeed given that stamp of approval. And as legend has it, one night in Rome at the Great Lateran Council of 1215, St. Dominic encounters St. Francis, and even though they had never met, both of them recognized each other because they had dreamt of each other the night before. And Dominic famously says to Francis, "We are companions. We will work together, you and our brothers, striving towards our goal, which is the salvation of souls. And together, no one will stand in our way." And so there's been a wonderful tradition of the orders of the Dominican, the order of preachers, and the order of friars minor, the Franciscans, in complementing each other in our charism. It's often said there's been a little bit of an exchange for St. Francis and his movement in Assisi of embracing fully radical poverty of life influenced St. Dominic when it came to, within the one vow that we make as Dominicans, that is obedience, also taking on voluntary poverty. And for the Franciscans, especially because St. Francis was not perhaps keen and skilled at administration, they took on the great constitutional governance that St. Dominic had created, a kind of insightful democracy, if you will, in religious life that elects superiors and is governed from priories, from houses, not top down, but from the will of the community, bottom up, sort of democratic kind of structure. And so for St. Francis, indeed, it takes this on as well. It's said that they exchanged gifts to each other, St. Dominic giving St. Francis his leather belt and rosary, and St. Francis giving St. Dominic his cord made of wool. And as the history went on, especially when it comes to the United States, there had been times of Franciscan and Dominican rivalry, theologically, spirituality, and yet when those orders came to the New World, there was a kind of interchange in which on the feast of St. Dominic, a Franciscan would preach, and on the feast of St. Francis, a Dominican would preach. It goes back to that wonderful epitomation of Dante in the Paradiso, when St. Thomas Aquinas, the great Dominican theologian, sings the praises of St. Francis, and the great Franciscan theologian, St. Bonaventure, gives the eulogy for St. Dominic, each order putting the praises and the blessings of the corresponding other founder into their mouths. The other thing which you may not know is that when Dominicans and Franciscans established missions, especially on the West Coast, they had a tradition of placing each other's great saints somewhere in a place of prominence. Now, the Dominican missions, which were in Baja and up the coast, right towards the modern-day San Diego, are no longer existent, but the great Franciscan missions that we're all aware of in California exist to this day. And here's a little bit of a scavenger hunt for you. In every Franciscan mission, you can find a Dominican saint. And it's there because that great companionship that Dominic and Francis saw in each other, each one giving a complementarity to each other. St. Francis saying, preach, and if necessary, use words. St. Dominic saying, preach, share the gospel through study, through community life, through liturgical preaching. Today then, as we celebrate our Holy Father Francis and our Holy Father Dominic, we ask that in our own lives we see our spiritual life in need of companionship. Our relationship with Jesus is not just an individual, solo exercise. We all need good companions. May the great example and companionship of St. Dominic and St. Francis truly inspire us to be good companions and to search out for those friends we need in the great adventure of our spiritual journey. Amen.